It's hard to keep things dazzling white. I recently saw a film, The Phantom Thread. It's an Oscar-nominated film. Daniel Day-Lewis is one of the actors in the film. I will tell you it is a very interesting story about themes of perfection and holding on to control. The director seems to like focusing in on characters in the films he makes like this. Daniel Day-Lewis plays a designer of dresses in England in the 1950s. He makes dresses for royalty and the rich and famous. And at one point in the film, he is making a wedding dress for a princess, royalty, who is getting married. And without getting into the details, the night before the princess is to see the wedding dress for the first time, Daniel Day-Lewis collapses, and the dress is torn as he collapses and is stained. And I have to tell you that I had a little smile in this moment as I was watching the film. It was probably an inappropriately timed smile, but I was just happy to see somebody else ruining something that was white and clothing. Last Sunday, I was getting ready to come to y'all in church, and I took my shower and I got dressed, got everything on without my jacket, and with the exception of my shoes. And I pulled my shoes out of the closet and I was like, wow, they look horrible. They need some polishing. So I quickly threw one on my hand and got the polish out and started working on it. And as soon as I took the shoes off my hand from polishing, the whole cuff of my beautiful new white shirt was covered in polish. My new shirt that my wife had given me for Christmas, just to wear for y'all in church. Oh, I was so frustrated. Katie saw what happened. She just exited the bathroom. She was like, oh my. It is hard to keep things dazzling white, isn't it? The author of Mark places so much emphasis on Jesus' clothing. His clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them. And Peter is so amazed. You just know Peter's going to speak up. He can't keep his mouth shut. He is so amazed with what he is witnessing. He's like, Jesus, I have a great idea. Let's start building some structures here. You know, let's get one for Moses and one for Elijah and one for you. It's pretty muddy up here on this mountain, and we want to keep you dazzling white. So let's build a structure around you. Isn't that so us? We experience something powerful or a big moment in our life, and by golly, we want to protect it. We want to put it in safekeeping. Your child's baptismal dress needs to be passed on for 5 generations. Your wedding dress, you'll spend $300 on having it dry cleaned and put in an acid-free box, possibly never used again. By the way, how come tuxes are rentals? What is the deal with that? We don't dry clean and box up our tuxes. Very interesting. We get a beautiful new carpet, cream, white carpet, and the edict is out. Thou shalt never walk on this carpet in shoes ever in all eternity. We get a new tablecloth that's supposed to go under food. Thou shalt never spill food on this beautiful white tablecloth. Isn't it funny, these moments that we build monuments around special clothing items and carpet and tablecloths, and don't we do it around spiritual moments as well? We want to put it in a dwelling place, a tent. It's like God didn't move before it, and God's not going to move after it, but we're going to preserve it in an acid-free box for $300 at the dry cleaners. Wow, we build monuments. Rabbi, it's good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwelling places, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. The human irony is that often the exact experience where we really have a sense of the presence of God can be the experience that will stifle our continued growth because we only pay attention to that one grand moment. But if we look into the story, isn't it good news that God is on top of this? Jesus can't even doesn't even have time to answer Peter's grand idea. What happens? The smoke descends on the mountain. All that dazzling whiteness seems to dissipate in this cloud cover. And then we get the voice. This is my son, the beloved. Action word, verb, get ready to hear it. Listen to him. Listen to him. Keep your faith alive. Human beings, stop. James, Peter, John, stop trying to build monuments and shrines. Listen to what God is calling you to next. Your relationship with God is active and alive, not stuck in a certain place in time. And again, all we have to do is look at the scriptures to get some good news, some relief for our situation. If we go just a chapter ahead, you know what James and John are doing? They're pulling Jesus aside, saying, hey, Jesus, up in heaven, can we sit on your left-hand side and on your right-hand side? Isn't this a great idea? We think it's awesome. Being right there with you in that prime position. James and John, again, trying to control things, trying to be perfectionists about what the plan is, but they just show their messiness. All we have to do is go 6 days behind our story to see Peter. And what Peter's doing, Peter has this grand moment where Jesus says, "Who do you say I am?" And Peter says, "You are the Messiah, a gold star." And just a few moments later, Jesus is telling the disciples that he's going to become very unpopular with the authorities and that they're going to want to kill him and that indeed he will die and indeed he will be raised again. And what does Peter do? Peter pulls him aside and starts to rebuke him. And Jesus turns his back on him and says, "Get behind me, Satan." I asked this to my men's group on Tuesday. How many of you have called your good friend Satan before? Not many of you. We don't say this, yet Jesus says it to Peter. I mean, it's a tough moment. Yet the good news is, in Peter's attempt to neaten up the story, to control the story, to make it perfect the way he thinks it needs to be perfect. Just like James and John, that in the midst of all that messiness, that God is still pulling them close, allowing them to be a part of this amazing moment that is the transfiguration, still working with us in all our flawedness. The disciples model our human perfectionism, our controlling tendencies in nature, and our human messiness. It's hard for things to stay dazzling white. And indeed, in just a short bit of time after this scene, Jesus' dazzling white clothing will become clothing stained in blood because of human brokenness. And that is the way it is supposed to be. So that we might learn to be dependent on the one who offers grace, the one who heals us from our controlling nature and our perfectionism and our human messiness. The voice of God came over the mountaintop and said, "This is my son, the beloved." Your job is not to build structures. It's not to preserve this moment in time and go back to it over and over again. Your job is to listen to me, because it's hard to keep things dazzling white. Amen.